Imam Abdul Kareem of Masjid al-Jamia in downtown Atlanta, Georgia. And during the 10 years that he had the masjid, he gave about 3,000 shahadas to people who came from backgrounds of drug abuse, of different kind of issues. He intentionally put the mosque in the part of downtown that was like the worst. And his whole point was, I want to catch all the bad people from the time they leave the train station before they get to the wine store, the liquor store. And then I'm going to change them around in that process. Now, when you make a commitment to go to a place like that, there's a problem. You can't choose your neighbors, and you're in a bad neighborhood. So one of our neighbors one year was the Palace. And the Palace was a club that was 2 doors down from the mosque, dedicated to flagrant gay men that would flood the streets at different times of the day. And one day, while sitting outside, my father and his friend, they just decided to have a different kind of conversation, a different level of engagement. They saw 3 transvestites walk out of the Palace, and they walked up to them and they said, look, without judgment, I would like to know why you do this. Why are you men dressed up like women? And the guy says, you know, everybody has their own excuses for the things they do, but this guy said, I figure we have one big sin in our life we can commit, and God will forgive us for it. This one's mine. So the conversation went on, and it ended up with, look, have you ever thought about coming back to God, coming back to Allah, going back into the mosque or to whatever? And the guy reached up and grabbed his chest, and he said, listen to me. These breasts are real. He said, how am I supposed to walk into anywhere? Tell me the mosque that will accept me now. And that's the issue. How many mosques do we know would let 3 transvestites come on the brother's side with their T-shirts poking out to here? Not many, I don't know any. So in the midst of this, my father asked me to do something to help the community. And my strength, I'm an IT guy, right? I have done IT now, I hate to say how old I am, but I think it's 21 years now, since I was about 14 when I graduated from high school. And I said, okay, I'm going to launch masjids.org. Because when I did the research, you've got some 85% of Muslims in the United States that don't go to the masjid. Whoa. I mean, even for the Eid prayer. When you see the majority of the Muslims in the space, you're only looking at about 15 to 20% of the people in this country. At the same time, the user group for the internet that stayed on the internet the most time, the demographics matches the Muslim community, almost 75 to 80% of the Muslim community. So I said, well, what better way to reach people than go online? So we launched masjids.org, and it got to a point very quickly. We did the Ramadan Roadshow, and we rode all around the East Coast, and we fed about 25,000 people, had a bunch of different iftars and everything else to promote it. And you couldn't put in the word masjid into Google without masjids.org coming up either first or the top 4 or 5 results being masjids that we built the masjid website for. And even to this day, if you put the word masjid in Google, at least 3 or 4 of those top sites were masjids.org websites, and we built that traffic to that point. Now, after doing a lot of work, we had these open forums, these open message boards. And the idea was you could come online, ask a question, or present your issue without saying who you are. And immediately, in irony, one of the first guys that did it was a Muslim who had become a homosexual and was living a strong homosexual lifestyle. And he really wanted to get back into the masjid. And he asked the imam at the time was Imam Pliman El-Amin, Atlanta Masjid in Atlanta. He said, how do I do it? He said, my appearance speaks to my lifestyle. So how am I supposed to walk back into the mosque? And through that conduit, he was able to coach him back in. To this day, I don't know who he is. All I know is he wrote back and said, I'm now attending the masjid 3, 4, 5 times a week. And we still don't know who he is. So after some time, we built enough websites. We thought, okay, we've done a good job, 5 years at this, masjids are building websites, we can stop because it's costly anyway. And we cut it off. No more masjids.org. And we saw there were tons of different masjid websites. But the problem that was there, the root cause, still existed. Everybody was just using the website as a way to say, here's what's happening in my mosque, here's our point of view, here's what we think about. And it still didn't have the mots necessary to really conquer the issue of addressing people who were turned away from the masjid because of 3 basic concepts. Now, these 3 basic concepts we found recently because we decided to take another project, the online masjid, a 100% online masjid. Now, so I work for Genius Core, and what we do is we help build innovative and startup communities around the world. And we've kind of conjured up this concept of crowdsourced co-creation of ideas. And that's when you basically take a group online, you introduce a topic, and you allow them to build up what that model for that topic should be. We did this with the online masjid. In about 3 days, we had about 500 people in our group, and they start chattering back and forth about several different topics. And we tried to allow it where no one was challenging each other's topic. They were able just to say what they want. And we came up with 3 things that any masjid, definitely one online, had to have. First, it had to be non-biased. I don't care if you're a Pakistani. There's no such thing as an Indo-Pak online masjid that's inclusive. There's no such thing as an Arab one or an African-American one. It had to be all-inclusive. It shouldn't have one imam. It's not the president of the United States. He's the imam at the masjid. So you should have guys who represent everybody. You should have women who are giving. Maybe they can give the khutbah, but they darn sure can give a bunch of bayan. And they should be available to talk to people and receive the message. Number 2, you had to be non-denominational. In order to draw in the people who are now being pushed away from the masjid, you can't say Sheikh such and such. You can't say Tariqa this. Nobody wants to hear it. That's good for you. Follow that path. But the masjid itself shouldn't involve itself. The purpose of the masjid is to bring people closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to push them away. And anything that leads to the third thing is taboo. And that it should be 100% non-judgmental. No one should feel as if they're being judged by their opinion, their way of thinking, or anything if they're going to be reached and if you're going to give them dawah. So my concept is to run an online masjid like a Silicon Valley startup. If you think about Google or Ask.com, you know, Google was great at one point. You spit in something, you search for it, you got a strong algorithm that spit up a result that had value. Now, when they started shoving in their own opinions with too many AdWords and stuff, now you got Microsoft on the campaign against them saying, have you been frugal? And that's because when you become non-biased to being biased, you lose respect and you lose credibility. And people don't want to attend to it anymore. And as masjids go, they have to ask themselves a serious question. I've raised money. I've taken the people's time, all to say that I'm here to remind people about Allah and give them a place to come and remember Allah. If I have not done that properly, will I not have to answer on Yawm al-Qiyamah for how I spent that money, how I spent their time, and so forth and so on. So the concept of an online masjid that's run like a Silicon Valley startup is something that should be embraced by every single masjid everywhere, and something that they should put a heavy amount of time into doing it if they're going to be held accountable for the money and the things that they've done on Yawm al-Qiyamah.